All right, my delightful third graders, it is time for our clay projects. Remember that you practiced before, and so this is your chance to make your final clay project. We experienced clay and we played with it, and now we're going to make our final project. Now I'm starting with just a lump. Look at it. It is not even perfect, and you really don't want a sphere or some other 3D shape in this case, because what we're making are snails or snakes, and we start by making both of them the same way. Now I've given you a lot of clay, but I'm going to split up my clay so that you can see how I can make a snail or a snake with the same amount, okay? So I'm going to take this piece. Either way, if you're making your snail or if you're making your snake, you want to squeeze that clay out into a long piece. Kind of looks like a rope, but when you talk about ceramics or when you talk about clay, this is called a coil, and this is the coil technique. When you were in kindergarten, first and second grade, I taught you the pinch technique, and you made basically a pinch pot, but we called it a bowl, and then you used those same pinching techniques to make a turtle. Now we're moving on into a coil, and the best way to do that, I found, is to squeeze it out first and to then roll it. Now, people who are really good at this can keep this coil to be a perfect sort of cylinder, can keep it to be really square. But I'll tell you a secret. I'm not very good at making coils. My coils always tend to kind of be flatter, and that's okay, but that's why I like to squeeze it out first, about as long as I want it to, and then roll it, because I find that I tend to not squish it as much. So I have a pretty long coil here, and the first one that I'm going to make is a snake. Now, this pretty much already looks like a snake, right? They're long, they got a cylinder, but you know snakes also have heads, so you can use your clay tools. You can cut, a mouth open, you can shape some eyes. I've seen some people really make some great looking tongues that come out, or some fangs. Those are all things that you can do, and that's totally fine. However, when I put this in the kiln, I'm poking my eyes and my nostrils into my snake. When I put this in the kiln though, I'm gonna need for you to roll it up somehow. So however you want to coil up your snake, which again is a pretty natural position for a snake to be in. Snakes tend to coil up, and then when they're moving, they tend to be long. I need for you to somehow coil up this snake. So now I'm going to take it and start kind of making a smiley face, but I'm going to start coiling it up onto itself somehow. Now, I think that I'm going to still keep its head kind of sticking up, and this is really my favorite thing about clay, because I have this snake that really does look like it's sort of sitting up at you, which I think is pretty neat that, a material can do that, or a medium in art can do that. And then I'm going to stick up my tail like maybe it's a rattlesnake and it's sitting there and it's protecting something. Now, I haven't made this snake really big. I've only used about half the clay that I've given you. So if you only use half of your clay, you have all of this clay to make something else with it. Maybe you want to have it protecting its eggs, because snakes lay eggs. Maybe you want to put it on a rock. Maybe you want to add wings to your snake, or a hat to your snake. All of those things can happen. Now, when you attach pieces though to your clay project, you really want to make sure that they're on. Me just sticking this on here is not going to work. And that's where sometimes your clay tools can really come in handy, because I'm just going to like smooth this piece together. I don't even know what it is, but I'm just using this as an example for you. I'm just going to smooth this piece together so I can't tell where my snake started and where this piece started. And that's just going to help it really stay on there. Maybe I'll turn this into a little wing that I'm going to put on my snake. Maybe my snake will be a flying snake. But it's up to you. You can add anything you want to. You could add patterns on your snake with your different clay tools. Actually, a popsicle stick is really good for drawing diamonds, because you can get just about the same shape over and over again with the end of a popsicle stick. All of these things are different options if you want to make your snake. Now, you still have a lot of options if you want to make your snail, but you start the exact same. You make your long rope, just like I did before, or your long coil. I'm going to squeeze it out, and then I'm going to roll it. I'm going to move my snake a little bit. I'm going to squeeze it out, and then I'm going to roll it around. All right. Now, if I make a snail, I'm going to be rolling this coil together to make my snail shell, and then at one end is going to be my snail's head. So I basically start by rolling this coil into a circle, and I just take my hand and I move it along to help roll it into a circle, because this is really the shape of a snail shell. Now I'm going to take this part and I'm just kind of going to tap it down a little bit to make sure that it can stand up really nicely by itself. Now this is my head, and I can make my snail's head however I want. I might pinch up some antennas a little bit, because snails tend to have some antennas. But remember, if I add any pieces, like let's say I want to add a hair bow to this snail, okay? If I decide that I'm going to add, I need to tap it down so that it stays. If I decide that I want to add a hair bow to this snail, I have to do the same thing to the snake. I can't just press it on there like that. I'm going to need to take my clay tool, whether it's a pencil or a popsicle stick, and I'm going to need to really smooth on at least some pieces so that it really, really attaches. Now, if you get to college or middle school or high school, they tend to call this slipping and scoring. But for us and for the kinds of clay we're working with, really smoothing it on there makes it work. So I've got some little antennas here. I can add some eyeballs. I can add a smiley face because I want a happy little snail. I could even draw designs on my snail shell, but I still have, or I would have, like all of this extra clay that I could add, maybe some ground around my snail, maybe other things. The biggest rule that you've got to remember is I need for you to give me one thing. So if you want to make a snail family, that's fine, but they all have to attach together. So if I want to make, say, a baby snail to go with this mama snail, that's okay. But somehow I've got to carefully attach this baby snail. Maybe I'll put her right on top right here. Remember that you have yellow glaze for you to use, okay? So that's something else. You don't have to glaze your whole project. You can just glaze pieces. But be thinking about how you're going to work with coloring it in the back of your mind. So here's my snail, and I've added some personalized things. Here's my snake, and I've added some personal details. These are the basics, but you guys can take it and really make it your project, all right? Remember, when you're done, you've got to bring it back to me so I can write your name at the bottom, okay? All right, guys, good job. I can't wait to see your projects.